Hello, it's your dev dog here. Riff. So today I just wanted to show you how you can make your own stylized wood like this. And it's a pretty manual process, so it's not really like too complicated, but it is just time consuming. And I also made the shader, and that shader I'll show you at the end also how that shader works. But the look of it is really done through the sculpting process. These two planks have the same shader, it's just differently sculpted. So this one was done using regular sculpting, and what I'm going to show you today is the way I did it with this one, which was done using the multi-res modifier. So if you've never worked with this, I think this is a good introduction to it. Let me show you how to actually get started. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to get a cube or form your mesh in whatever way you want in order to just get the base sculpt of it or the base shape of it. And now if we look at this, this is 2 meter by 2 meter by 2 meter cube. And then if we just scale this down, let's actually recenter it, Alt G to go back to the center. Then we move it up 1, and then move it to the left 1. The reason I'm doing that is just to have the corner of it right here. That's actually just for my workflow, but it doesn't really matter. So then you just scale it on the X to whatever size you want, scale it on the Y, and actually just have the Y as 0.1 just to keep it consistent, a consistent thickness. But you might want a little bit of that inconsistency if you want. And then let's go into edit mode. And since we're using the multi-res modifier, we want to create like squares. And the reason why we want squares is because when we use the multi-res modifier, we're basically just subdividing the cube. And if we have inconsistent like rectangles, some areas of the mesh are going to get more detail than the others. So basically you just want to add some loop cuts and just try to get it as square as you possibly can. Just so we have a consistency in the detail in the spread of the triangles. So probably the best way to go about that would be if we go here and then we try to get these as square-like as possible. And at some point you're like passing diminishing returns on adding in more loops. And I think right about there is a good amount, and I just left click to add. So we're getting 16 cuts. The number of cuts doesn't really matter. We're just looking at these side to try to get these as square as possible. And like I said, you could probably get this more square if you add more, but you know, it's not too big of a deal if it's not perfectly square. Just try to get it as close as you can without adding in too many loop cuts. And then let's do it from the front now. And again, we want it square. So actually, this looks pretty square right there. Now, it's not perfectly square up top. It's not perfectly square everywhere. But this is a square enough where I feel like this is comfortable. I'm comfortable doing this. Now, depending on the way you want your model, you might want to like adjust it, like move it around if you want to add a little bit of variation in terms of where each vertex is. You could do that here. You could also use the proportional editing tool just by pressing O or this little button up here, and then you just move this, and then you can add like whatever different variations you want. You could use the scroll wheel to mouse up and down to increase or decrease that area of influence, and just form this however way you want to form it. And this is really just for us to make it easier for when we're actually sculpting to get the shape that we want. In my case, I actually do want this this to be pretty much a rectangle, because the use case that I'm looking for is to actually like attach it together and to have these like planks to attach together. So for my case, it makes sense to just keep it this way. And then when we go to add the multi-res modifier, we just go to the modifier tab, the wrench, click add, generate, and then multi-resolution. And then when we click subdivide, you'll see that we lose that hard edge. And the reason why is because we're just subdividing it basically. So we can get rid of this. And if you want this hard edge, like we do have over here, where we have this like very defined, like this is a very much a rectangle. The way that I like to do that is, let's just go here again, go to generate and add a bevel. You'll see we will add this little bevel, press Control A over it to apply the scale. So now the bevel isn't messed up. Make sure to apply the scale, or else the bevel will appear like this, like stretched out in certain places. So if you don't want that stretch, apply the scale. And now we have this even bevel all around. And I am just using the bevel just to define that edge. So if we go into this mode and then we take a look, this bevel should be fairly small. And it's really just there to support the shape of the cube, of the rectangle. And then we're going to click add, or we're going to apply this going into object mode. Control A while we have our mouse over the bevel, just like that. And now if we go back, we'll see that we have this supporting loop right here. And then we have this really thin rectangle, which is also going to get subdivided. So there's going to be a lot of faces along this like very thin face right here. This is going to get subdivided a lot, but you know, not too big of a deal. I think Blender does a pretty good job at like just optimizing the speed when we're sculpting. So now that we have that, when we go back to add the multi-resolution modifier, when we subdivide this, you'll see that we keep that rectangle shape. That's exactly what I want. And then once we're in this mode, we can go into sculpt. Okay, now I don't see it right now, and I think that's because we have this rendered mode out. So let's just go into this mode, and now we see it. Okay, now if we press period to focus on this, or local view by doing that same slash, we should be able to go into it. Okay, now that we're here, we've subdivided a couple times. Let's go ahead and just check how much detail we have in the subdivision. You can see we don't have a lot of detail. Probably want more detail than that. So we're going to subdivide one more time. Yeah, probably a little bit more detail than this. Just one more subdivision I think should be good. Let's Control Z that. Subdivide one last time. Yes, so we want that smooth look. And as you can see, whenever we move around, we get this really like sort of annoying blurring that happens. That's just because Blender is trying to optimize the scene whenever we move. In order to turn that off, just go over here to the top right to options, and then we turn off fast navigation, and now we'll see that we don't have that anymore. Okay, now in order to get that like stylized, like cuts, grooves into the wood, all we have to do is we go to our crease tool. Pretty sure this is crease. Let's see. Yeah, that's a crease polish, and there's a crease sharp. And you could really decide whichever one you want to choose, and you'll see that we have this. So that's that version. And then we also have this version, which is that. So depending on which one you like more, if you want this one, probably shrink it down a bit. And if you want more of that sort of look where we have like a more organic, like longer view, you could go with this regular crease mode. But if you want a sharper look, we could go over to right next to is the crease sharp, I believe. Yep. And then this gives us a much sharper angle of attack, and we can actually even make it bigger. And then that will give this look. Make this a little bit smaller. Actually, I kind of like the high pressure. And then I also have the radius turned on, so we can go from thin to thick to thicker to like a light fall off. So having this radius turned on, the pen sensitivity, is pretty good for that. And in order to get that actual like smooth look, it's kind of difficult to do that, you know, on your own. Your hand like jitters a little bit while you're doing it, you know. And it's difficult to get that very like smooth look. So in order to get that, to like sort of force it, we go over to stroke, and then we add stabilized stroke. And then this stabilized stroke is going to add this new UI where it's like a red line, and the path will actually follow this red line, and it makes making really smooth strokes a lot easier. We're basically going to cut grooves into our piece of wood. In order to do that, all I do is I just sort of move my mouse up, or my pen up. I'm using a display tablet right now. And then sometimes you'll want to, at some point, stop and then flip it, go the other way, and then just add this really quick cut. And then you can even start in the middle over here and then sort of curve back and then go back up again. And then that's how you do that pattern. And then sometimes we have spots like this where you just want to cut into that like that. So we have a little bit of, we don't have like these lines going all the way across. Sometimes maybe you'll even want to, as you get higher and higher, slowly start to let go of the pen pressure and then sort of fade it out once you're at the top, just like that. And then probably just want to do more of these lines and have them just about like anywhere you want to add them. And this is your artist opportunity, your artistic eye to see where do you want these grooves, where do you want them to come from. Maybe we want smaller grooves right there. Maybe we want something that doesn't go as far. Maybe it doesn't doesn't even go all the way to the top, just like that. And then we basically just do this on all the sides. Now we have this one version. It's pretty good. The way that I like to do this is I like to sort of see this pattern that we have and connect them on the sides as well. So this is a good opportunity right here to connect these two on this side. So we just grab here, we do the same thing, and we sort of curve into each other. And that'll give us this like, I won't do that again. Just so we have this nicer curve. Okay. And that gives us this section that we can plump up later. So we can add more like depth. So this like very organic shape of having this piece like sort of jut out and separate from the rest of the plank of wood, I think is really nice. The same thing at the bottom. Sometimes I'll go here and then connect it there. And then we can also puff this up a little bit later. And it's sometimes nice to not even just like connect it necessarily where you would think it would make sense. Maybe it's nice to just do that. Maybe even it could have like a really big round trip across and then connect back. Stuff like that, you know. However you want to sculpt your wood is, I think, a fantastic way to do that, you know. But I do really like to have this like connecting section going throughout the model. So you start with one face and then you sort of see where this first front design takes you and see what you can do with it. The way that I like to do it, you really like base everything off of that one design. And then even like this, you'll see how this side of the influence, this side of the design sort of influences even the entirely other side. And it gives this nice like cohesive feel for the design, you know? And this you don't have to like live in like set in stone. If you want to like go like, actually, I think it would look nice to have something like this, just add it, you know, who cares? Add it in, you know, like this would be sick. Let's just add this like slight little like that, you know. And now we have this really nice design here, and then we can sort of fade this out. And we'll fix that up. We'll touch things up later as we continue to go along. And now we have this one beginning line over here, so we'll keep that in mind. We can go ahead and do the same thing at the top we have things looping around. This looks like it would be a nice little chunk to just sort of cut around back in on itself like that. And then here we could do something like this. And then here also have a nice little cut like that. And then you'll see we have this cut going from here. And we'll just add this little notch right here just as an indicator, so telling us like, hey, don't forget about me. Start right here for me, please. I will also do that here. This is a pretty organic process. Like I said, it's really more however you want to go about doing this. If you want to do whatever lines or notches, like just go ahead, do whatever your heart tells you, you know, however your heart wants to go. Doesn't look like this has any really connecting this to any other side. So I want to add a little bit of groove coming from here, and then let's add in another groove like that, and then we can fade this out just by going back. Actually, let's just shade it, and then that was just a smooth shade, so I just held shift and then went over the line again. And I actually don't like the way that it landed on this side just because of our perspective. So I'm just going to do that again by shading over it, smooth brushing over it by holding shift. And then let's go back here. And now we have this. And now we also have some stuff at the bottom. Just add that. Just little indicators, and they don't even have to necessarily be a part of the integral design. Like you could see, where was it? Over here, there was this like really subtle fade out into this, and it doesn't even reach the top over here. But you see that this line does go pretty deep on this side. So, you know, just do however, like I said, however you want to do it, however you feel like doing it. Maybe some lines are more important, maybe some lines are less important. You go around, then we do this again. Go around. I think for this one, I think it feels nicer to sort of fade out before it reaches the bottom. And then for this line, we can make this one an integral piece. And now I have this problem of always adding in these notches like near the center of the piece of wood. And I sort of did it again over here. And it's a nice idea to try to, oh wow, that lined up perfectly with that by accident. It's a nice idea to try to not keep these like, you know, these patterns of having these notches in the same spot every time, because then, you know, if we have one over here, sort of have one around the same spots, it sort of starts to feel very samey. I'm not going to adjust that too much, just because I think it's fine. Hopefully we'll have enough variation throughout the rest of the design where it doesn't feel too outlandish to have that same design right there again. But we'll keep it in mind when you go up here, and let's do it here again. You know, let's do that design here so we can have sort of that same design near the top, and then continue to fill this out. And I know I have some design, I know I have some of these grooves in places where I didn't really integrate them too well. We could get rid of that one. It doesn't look good. Let's stop right there. Okay. So like for example, it doesn't look too great, but we can always just go back in and fill this in later. Okay, now I feel like we're in a pretty good spot. This area of the wood is feeling pretty bland. So let's go ahead and try to make something happen here. Let's go down. Let's add in one of these notches here. It would be nice if we could just integrate that notch. Okay, let's do that again. It would be nice if we can integrate this notch over here, sort of have it go up, and then can make it like meet itself back up here again, you know. And now we have this nice like sequestered off portion of the piece of wood just right there. and then we can really amplify this. I'm going to go over to the crease brush a little bit and just amplify or exaggerate this portion. And I'm just going to dig into the mesh like this around the corners. And actually we'll start to do this for all of our edges that go around corners, just because whenever we use this brush with the stabilized stroke, you'll notice that it doesn't really pinch the way we want it to pinch, or like dig in the way we want it to dig. So I like to go in and dig in manually myself, so we can actually get that that deeper cut into the wood. And same thing over here, dig, dig, just like that, you know. And I have this nice continuation throughout the design, you know. I think it's important to realize that this is, you know, wood is very organic. It's like one of the most organic pieces of material that you'll find. So you don't have to follow too strict of like rules that you set for yourself. If there is like stuff that like doesn't really work out or doesn't make sense, you know, I think it's important to just realize that it's wood, you know, it's organic. You have an organic piece of lumber. People like that texture, you know. And now that we're here, there we go. Let's go down. Also adjust this down here. Cut into that deeper and make this connection between them a bit more obvious. I'm just, like I said, I'm just using the crease brush, smoothing. And let's actually try to use this crease sharp to try to dig that in. And even we can add the clay strips. I just press C to access that and sort of inflate these edges over here. And we're going to be doing this a lot in order to get this really puffy, organic look. Shift C in order to quickly get to the crease brush. And then we'll continue to add in these depths into these corners. Here, this transition is not as smooth as I would like. And this base shape is your base shape, you know, so, you know, you could try to get this the way you like it before you start to move on to higher details. As you can see, if we zoom in, we have a lot of this polygonal pattern. That's fine for now, because we're going to be adding more to this in higher detail. Now, this is pretty much it. So this is our base design for a plank of wood. And I think it looks pretty nice. Looks pretty nice. Now, in order to add more detail, all we have to do is just click subdivide again. And now if we zoom in into the same model, you'll notice a lot more detail. At this point, actually kind of make a big jump. This might be a mistake, you know. I kind of make a big jump from going from like this really like broad detailed look over to a more really high poly. So I think even 5 isn't enough. Let's test it out. Yeah, you see, we have these like jagged lines, and I kind of want this to be not jagged. It's still a little bit jagged. I want this even more than that, even more. So let's click subdivide one more time. Okay, now we're at subdivision level 7. You see we're at 5 million polygons. And now, yeah, we still have a little bit of jaggedness when we look really close, but I think from afar, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. And now in order to get those striations, there's a few different ways to do it. And I actually use all of these variations. But the main way to get those striations of the wood throughout the entire design is actually to come in, and we're going to be using the clay strip brush. And you'll notice that a thing about the clay strip brush, if we make it a little smaller, when we draw, we have these really harsh lines here on the edges. And we're actually going to be using that as an advantage, for our advantage, to sort of layer that on top of each other and create that really organic looking striations throughout the entire wood design. Now, in order to do that, what you just have to do is just do strokes on top of each other, and you'll start to notice almost immediately how we can build up those striation patterns fairly quickly. I think the more striations you add, you could, vary the size of your brush in order to get like some striations being larger, smaller. And this is pretty much how I get the design for most of the wood. And I think it's pretty nice to note, I'm going to time lapse a lot of this. But before I do, actually, I'll just time lapse this, and then you can see the process and see how it goes from pretty much from this over to that really woody pattern. And I'll see you guys once I'm done with this portion of the sculpt. And for you could just follow along and sculpt it yourself. Oh, I probably also did want to mention, probably pause, I'll keep going, but when you want this woody pattern to sort of follow the flow of your initial design, so at this point you'll notice that I'm starting to use my strokes and I'm starting to go in the direction of these like modules, these wood nodules, Now, really quickly, I wanted to just show that you could change the color of the material quickly just by going over here. Instead of matte cap, or you could change it to different styles of material. But usually, not usually, but sometimes I'll switch it to this one just so we can really see that granular structure. And I think that brown works well to show that. I think this even puts us closer to that wood texture, so I might just keep it on this matte cap. Matte cap here is default. This is the brown one. Okay, so we finished pretty much doing the entire, didn't mean to click that, the entire wooden plank. We got the top, we got the bottom. And I realize now that actually it probably would have been better if we made these structural changes to the wood before we did this. We can work in multiple divisions even after we worked in a higher division. So for example, like we see that we have a lot of these small striations. If we just go back, you'll see that these striations on level 6 are still there. Level 5, they're still there, but they're more blurry. And now there you could see some like bumps and stuff, but they're pretty much gone, right? But if we decide, hey, actually, let's start to build out these nodules more like cleanly. Like, so for example, like probably a thing that I like to do a lot is to plump up these center modules. So it gives it more like dimension, more texture, you know, just like this. And then this is my favorite thing. Like this is a pretty good demonstration right here. If we plump this up a little bit, and then we go up here, I like to really extrude this out, fill this out, and then with our crease brush, we dig this down, dig this down, dig this down, just like that. And we have this really big lump with our clay strip brush. We have this big plump little portion right here. And if we actually plump in, if we actually plump this side up also, I feel like it gives a lot of flavor between these right here. And now, if we go back up, you'll see that when we go back up, that our striations and stuff still exist there. They're a little bit stretched out because we stretched out the vertices, but they still exist on the actual mesh. And this is probably why it's better to do these sort of big lumpy changes before you start doing these small details. So a pretty good idea to do that. I'll be honest. I kind of actually don't like the way that this filled out. So let's break this down even further in the higher subdivision, just so we can actually get this this bump. I would probably just keep working in this higher subdivision too, just so we don't have to keep jumping back and forth between the different subdivision levels, just like that. Now we have this really organic feeling, like bump right there, you know. And what I like to do is, after we have this, this is the scrape brush right here. I like to go over the model and just like any flat edges, kind of just want to eliminate them just by rubbing across this. And if you think about like an actual piece of wood, you know, the edges are usually not sharp unless, you know, the carpenter or whoever like really sharpen them down themselves, because edges, the most out of anything else, get caught on things. They just get caught on things. So that's why you see a lot of the edge wear. That's why it's called wear, you know. It happens on the edges because the edges are caught the most on whatever, you know. Here is a great place to show this nodule bump over. So we're gonna just draw over this. And now we have this. Let's fill this up even more on this edge. And then we'll fill this up even more here. Now if we look at that, we'll see this feels a lot more organic. We want to push this in. Actually, I don't like that being pushed in. Let's get the scrape brush and then cut this in. Fill it up again, and then we'll cut again. Now we have this pretty organic feeling piece of wood crawl over the edges. And that's really something that I really like to see just in general throughout the whole model, is having these edges sort of disappear away. And we can press Control and then dig into it this way to sort of flatten it out. And we'll sort of build on it again just to try to get less of a structured look. Scrape this piece off. And this is really more just like, how do you feel? How do you feel about it, you know? Trying to feel out the shape rather than have like a solid idea of how the shape is supposed to look. I don't have an idea of how the shape is supposed to look. It's just sort of letting the piece of wood guide me, you know? Now we have this bump. Now look at that. Feels a lot more organic, natural. And we can start building this same concept of building out the center portion more in the middle. Like this. So it's not just like a, what is it called? A superficial texture. We actually build it up so it actually has mass in the middle. Like that. It doesn't have to be every single texture, you know. It doesn't have to be every single edge. Could really emphasize some nodules more than others. Make some stick out way more than others. And I feel like when you have that up and down, where you have that variation between, oh, this bump is actually more bumpy, you know, I feel it gives it more of a nicer look than having everything pop out, you know. Maybe having some of them flat would be nice. And then you can see up here we sort of lost this connection right here. Or maybe we just never had it to begin with. We could just add that back in. You know. And now this gives us another opportunity to create that really organic lump again over here. So we'll build it up over here. Let it wrap around the edges. And then really build up at the top. Do our soft crease brush and then dig into this a little bit. And I want to initially do my clay strip because I feel we brought this out a bit too much. And we still lost that connection. So let's see if we could emphasize that more. And then we don't want this overhang. Just don't like the way that looks. And depending on your use case, you might want to focus on the sides too. For me, actually, I feel like the sides are not too important, but I will still build up a couple pieces here and there just to That way, if I want to use this model for something where the sides are important in the future, then they'll already be there. I'll make this model more versatile for myself. But for my current use case that I have in mind, not too important. Really feeling. I feel like this whole process really just like feeling what feels good, you know? Look around, see what feels good, see what can be plumped, see what doesn't need to be plumped. If we can make something a little rounder, that would be nice. I really, really like the look of these bottom portions when they're not flat. I think it looks really nice. It looks really, really nice. I was about to say, I think we're good, but looking back at it, this still feels a bit too flat. So we actually want to add more. So we have this piece of plank. Now we can go back in and start to carve away more of these edges if you want, and just like really dig around. I think we were doing a little bit of carving already, but you know, if anything sticks out to you while you're flying around the model, just add in some carves into it, just so you don't have that uniformity, you know. And I like to keep the carves fairly untextured, like without any slices or anything. Actually, we could add some later, but because you know, usually if you're rubbing it on the ground, you'll have some. They'll tend to be flatter and shinier, you know. Okay, now with this, whenever you're happy with your model, this section is sort of sticking out to me. It's a process. It's a process. Okay, whenever you're happy with your model, the final little details that I like to add are going to be this like scratches across the piece of wood. And these scratches don't have to be like super deep. They don't have to be like that. You could do that if you want, but these scratches are more like, you know, like, oh, somebody like hit this piece of wood, and it lays on top of like sort of the entire thing, you know. And they usually tend to be straighter, you know. So we'll just slice across sometimes, just randomly, just like see what feels good, what makes sense. And then maybe this slice will be a deeper slice, so I'll push a little bit harder, and then we'll let go, we'll release and slip it off, you know, stuff like that. This will really add like a lot of like texture to your end result. You know, you don't have to go too much with it. And then I also like to do a similar thing across the bottom, where we have these like lines just coming from the top and the bottom, just to really give it like give it more of this like fabricated look around the bottom edges. I think that looks pretty good. Something that I've tried is actually doing the opposite and adding in some cuts that are protruding out. And I thought that looked interesting, but I don't know how super realistic that is. But it's interesting. It's an interesting thing to add. So all you have to do is hold control when you draw. And then it will, instead of cutting into it, it'll protrude out. So maybe adding in a couple of those, I think would be nice. Okay, now if we get out of sculpt mode, let's go back to our layout. See, oh, what happened to all our work? It's just the level viewport. We just have to increase it back to the same level that we were sculpting in if we want to see all that detail. But this is the huge benefit is if you did want to keep it low, you could still adjust it and do whatever you want, but it's still keeping that detail. And whenever you render, you'll see that our render is at 7. Whenever you do render, it will look, because we still have that detail in the render. Let's go into our shading, and I'll just show you the node setup. Okay, it's that one that we should be focusing on. So let's focus on it. We'll go to the multi-res. Let's increase the viewport to 7 so we can actually see what this will look like. So this material is based off of the big thing that's giving it its texture, this like cut look inside, is this node right here, this geometry node. And this is the reason why we have to do this in cycles, because if we try to do this in Eevee, so if we go to here, do this in Eevee, we don't get access to that geometry data for some reason. I don't know why, unsure. But when we're in cycles, we have access to it. And basically the only thing that we're doing is we're trying to get the pointedness. And we could take a look at this just by itself. And you'll see, oh, that's, if we go to pointedness, really subtle. That's why I added this color ramp to really accentuate the pointedness. And if we click on this, shift click, you'll see this is a lot more dramatic, and we actually get a lot more of that depth. And we can use this depth for a few things. We could use it for this, which is going to be our roughness. And this is the way that this is. We have it set on ease. So if we change this to linear, you'll see we lose a lot of that detail. But if we have it easing, we gain that back. And this B-spline, we just do ease. Actually, I was just messing around with these. This one doesn't seem to be affected too much by the color ramp. So more white is going to be more matte, and then darker is going to be shinier. And we don't want it black, because if it's black, it's like way too shiny. It looks like it's like wet. It looks like it's covered in water. And then we have this same pointedness texture mixing in with a noise texture. And this noise texture is just here to add a little bit of variation to the color. So if we click on that, you'll see that just that noise, but with the pointedness. And then we just mix in a little bit of it. Not too much, but just have a little bit more variation in the color. And this noise texture is just scaled up. I don't have any other values connected to it. And then we have the detail set at 2, roughness at 0.4, A3, and then the I don't know how to pronounce it. And we have a little bit of distortion on 0.5 distortion. And then if we take a look at that, with this pointedness, we can really create this nice little variation. If we look at that color, this is the base color without anything else. Look at that. And if you just want this, I think this is a fine enough look, but I actually went a step further. Oh, this was also another attempt at trying to get that pointedness texture, but I didn't like this one. just mixing the two bevels, because you don't get this depth. So if we look at this one, we do, let's look at that. We do get to see that depth covered in that one. So that's why I went with that approach. And this is just the base color. I think it looks pretty good actually compared to, it just looks fine. It looks nice. But I wanted to go a step further and really add a stylization to it. So I added a overlap opacity mix node, and I just have this gradient based off of the geometry, the position of here, and I'll show you this. The only thing I did over here was I changed this from it was 0 originally, and I changed it to 1. Let's take a look at this. And the reason why I did that is because if we set this to 0, you'll see that if it's based off of the origin point, and over here the origin point is right here, you see? So when we set that there, it really focuses a lot of the gradation from the corner. But if we set this to 1, it ignores the X direction, because this is just going to be 1. So from 1 to 1, and then over here, we don't even see it on this section because, because it's so far away from the center origin, right? So if we set this at 1, we just focus on the Y direction, and this is us just using this as a mask. And we get this from the position of the geometry. And then if we just look at this one just individually, you'll see we have that. But if we use a color ramp on it, we get that look. And we just want to use a color ramp just so we can use it as a factor for black and white. And then I added this color to it. And this color is really, really, really not like wood pretty much at all. Like, this is not wood-like at all. But the reason why I chose these extreme colors is because when we mix it with this wood color, it really creates this nice like gradation from this purple over to this like yellow color, I think this looks really nice. And then if we just attach this to the roughness and take a look at it, I think it has a really nice effect. And if you don't like these colors, you can absolutely just change them and see however, like hey, maybe you want more of a blue tone, so we click over here, change this to blue. Now it looks more like Nordic, looks more sad. And if you want, to change the yellow, change it to something else, make it really red, really a lot. This color ramp right here is a lot of the stylization factor. Just so you can take a look at this again, getting the position just to get the Y position from this. And then we're using this map range so we can limit this Y position, or the Z position, sorry, working in Unity, the Z position, so we can eliminate the X position, sorry. So we can eliminate the X position so that doesn't take into account, so we can get that nice gradation from top to bottom. And then using this color ramp to determine the actual colors. And I determined that B-spline looked the best in my opinion. Like, I didn't like the way that this was so even. I really like this sharp cutoff, But you can mess around with the interpolation methods. On this one, I did use a little bit of ease. But again, you can mess around with the interpolation methods in order to see what you like or don't like. But then this color variation is really where a lot of the style comes from. And then we plug that into an overlay mix, and we plug it into the B, and then this value, the actual wood texture, is coming from our geometry, the pointedness, to a color ramp set to ease. So we can really get out the without it. Hold on, see without it. Really subtle. You can barely see it. With the color ramp, really accentuates that. And then we move that over here to our mix node, which is being mixed with a texture. And this texture is just there to add just a little bit of variation to the overall color ramp, so we don't have these just if we were to do that, we don't just have this. We have a little bit of detail of coloring, even in the edges, even in the crevices. And then that's being sent to the overlay node, to the mix node here, and being overlaid with this. I tried different ones, tried add, tried color dodge. You can mess around with this value over, but I like the way that overlay looks. It keeps that darkness and adds just a little bit of color. So when you're looking at it from afar, you can really see that gradation. But up close, it's sort of it's a little more subtle, So I like that look, and that's pretty much it. Would not recommend this. Didn't like the way that looked. And then we just plug that into the base color, plug this into here. And that is our stylized wood. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, I'm planning on actually making these into actual models for game development, and cutting down these faces significantly. So cutting them down from 4 million to around like 1,000 for the entirety of the models. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and I will. Yeah, thanks for watching.